Unaware the wife he slapped was hiding a $400 million fortune, husband forced her to sign divorce papers. What she did later, with the judge's envelope, crushed him. He didn't just raise his voice. He raised his hand. In a quiet home, on an ordinary day, Victor Reed's palm met Elena's cheek with a sharp, humiliating sound that seemed to freeze the air around them. Papers lay scattered on the floor. His eyes were cold. Her world tilted. The next morning, he came back not with an apology, but with a folder. He slammed divorce papers onto the table and called it freedom. He told her she was holding him back. He said she should just sign and disappear. Elena, 32, gentle and calm, sat with the pen shaking between her fingers, while Victor's business partner watched and an officer stood by the door, making sure she cooperated. On his sleeve, she still smelled the perfume that wasn't hers. In his phone, another woman's name kept lighting up. He thought she was weak. He thought she had nothing. He thought forcing her to sign meant he had finally won. What he never knew was this. Long before he slapped her, long before he called her small, Elena's late father had locked away a secret, a $400 million trust in her name, designed to wake up only when she finally chose herself over him. And the real twist? The day Victor walked into court, smirking, expecting a simple hearing, Elena walked in holding a single sealed envelope meant for the judge, an envelope that carried more power than any slap, any insult, any threat he ever used. This is not just a story about a man who went too far. It's about what happens when the woman he thought was powerless decides to quietly stand. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice fade back into silence. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet soul who chose dignity over revenge. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The first thing Elena remembered was not the slap itself, but the way the room felt afterward. Frozen, tilted, wrong. Later, when she looked back over everything that happened, her mind would always circle around that moment. The sound, the shock. The way Victor looked at her like she was a problem he needed to manage, not a person he had hurt. But to understand that moment, the story has to slow down. It has to pull back and show who she really was before his hand ever rose. Elena Reed, 32, was not a woman people noticed at first glance. She blended into rooms the way warm light blends into morning air. Quiet, steady, never demanding attention. She remembered everything about other people. How Victor preferred smooth cotton shirts because rough fabric irritated his skin. How he hated loud music because it scattered his thoughts. How he needed silence before important meetings and believed the world should rearrange itself around his schedule. Victor, 35, ambitious and proud, rarely remembered anything about her. Not her favorite tea, not the way she liked to read near a window, not that crowded rooms made her anxious. Elena had grown up in a very different world from his. She came from a family that believed wealth should never be a weapon or a spotlight. Her late father, Elias Ward, built a quiet empire, old properties, long-term investments, shares in companies most people never heard about but relied on every day. He taught her that real power was the kind you didn't put on display. If people see your money before they see your character, he would say, you'll attract the wrong kind of love. When Elias died, he didn't just leave money. He left a structure, a private trust, sealed documents, properties in her name that she never claimed publicly. All of it was managed by his older sister, Aunt Miriam Ward, a strict, elegant woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. As trustee, Miriam's job was simple and ruthless: protect the Ward fortune and protect Elena. The trust had conditions. Elias had written them himself. The full funds would only become available to Elena if she married for love, and if, when that love failed, she walked away from the marriage without trying to strip her partner's wealth, even if he had wronged her. No greedy divorce, no bargaining for his money, no revenge through assets. Hide your worth, Elias had told her in his study when she was 18, sitting among shelves of old books and heavy wooden furniture. Let the world show you its intentions first. Elena lived by that rule. When Victor proposed years later, she didn't mention the Ward name in finance articles. She didn't talk about the trust. She didn't explain why Aunt Miriam insisted on meeting him only once, briefly, and then quietly stepped back. Victor never asked. He assumed she came from a modest background because she chose to live modestly. He assumed the house, paid off with money she never explained, was simply theirs, Manmo, Narshurn, and mostly his doing. He assumed her maiden name, Ward, was just another common surname. He thought she was lucky to be with him. He never wondered if it might be the other way around. Back in the present, after another long evening of raised voices and cold silence, Victor walked out of the living room without looking at her. The argument ended not with resolution, but with him grabbing his keys and slamming the door. Elena stood there for a moment, cheeks still warm, heart still tight. Then she slowly bent down to pick up the scattered mail that had fallen during the commotion. One envelope slid out of the stack, heavy cream-colored paper, embossed with a faint familiar crest. The Ward crest. Her fingertips paused over it. The symbol pulled her back instantly to her childhood home, to her father's study, to conversations about protection and timing. The return address was a quiet law firm that had handled Ward affairs for decades. Routine correspondence, probably. Annual updates, or something else. Before she could open it, her phone buzzed. Her sister, Clara Ward, 29, outspoken, sharp-eyed, fiercely protective, appeared on the screen. Clara had never fully trusted Victor. Elena answered. "Hey." Clara didn't waste time. Your voice sounds off. Did you and Victor argue again?" Elena forced a small smile, though no one could see it. "I'm fine, just cleaning up." Silence stretched between them, thin but heavy. Clara had known her too long to be fooled. "Elena," Clara asked softly, "did you ever tell Victor what Dad prepared for you?" The question hung there. Elias's words echoed in the back of Elena's mind. The sealed trust, the rules, the warning about men who loved money more than hearts. Elena looked toward the door Victor had just slammed. He hadn't come back to check on her. He hadn't asked if she was hurt. Her voice came out quiet, honest. "He married me, Clara. Not my name." Clara sighed softly on the other end. "Just remember, Dad didn't leave you helpless." "I know," Elena whispered. They ended the call. Elena set the Ward crest envelope on the table. She didn't open it. Not yet. From the living room, she heard the front door open again. Victor's voice floated in, louder now, followed by another man's tone. Evan Dre, Victor's business partner, stepped inside. Late 30s, always dressed a little too sharply, always laughing a little too quickly at Victor's jokes. He barely glanced at Elena. "Where's my jacket?" Victor snapped, like she was an employee who misplaced his things. Evan chuckled. "Man, you're always in a rush. Big meeting?" Victor adjusted his cuff. "Just fixing my life," he muttered. Elena turned away so they wouldn't see her expression. As they headed toward the door, their low voices drifted back. "She's too soft. She'll never fight back." They thought they were out of range. They weren't. Elena's face stayed calm. Too calm. Her gaze drifted back to the Ward envelope on the table. Her hand hovered above it, then stopped midway. A quiet breath left her lips as the scene narrowed around her. Soon the world would show its intentions, and when it did, she would have a choice to make. The first small cracks in Victor's behavior are about to appear, and they won't stay small for long. The night started with noise. Heavy footsteps, a slammed door, and Victor's sharp voice cutting through the hallway. No greeting, no "I'm home," just tension. Elena looked up from the sofa, startled. Victor was usually controlled, polished, careful about appearances. Even when he was annoyed, he tried to sound composed. Tonight something was off. He smelled of a sweet, expensive perfume she had never worn. One shirt button was misaligned, like he had dressed in a hurry or redressed too quickly. Elena watched him from across the room, her heart beating a little faster. She had known Victor Reed for 5 years, long enough to recognize patterns. He liked structure. He hated mess. He believed chaos was for other people, not him. This version of him, distracted, careless, smelling like someone else, felt wrong. "Long day?" she asked quietly. He didn't meet her eyes. "Don't start with questions," he snapped, walking past her. When he moved, that unfamiliar perfume drifted in the air again. Not faint. Fresh. Victor dropped onto the couch, pulling out his phone. He angled the screen away from her, shoulder turned just enough to block her view. He had never done that before. A hairline crack formed inside Elena, small but real. To fill the silence, she stood and walked toward the kitchen. As she passed behind him, his voice dropped low. Softer, warmer, not meant for her. "Sabrina, I'm home now." Elena froze. The name hit her like cold water, a name she had never heard him say. Not as a client, not as a colleague, not as a friend. She didn't know it yet, but Sabrina Cole was 28, bold and confident, a woman Victor had met months earlier at a business conference, someone who liked being admired, someone who didn't flinch at the idea of taking what belonged to someone else. In this moment, Elena only had the sound of the name. That was enough. Victor stiffened when he realized she was standing behind him. He ended the call too quickly, face tightening. "What are you doing standing there?" he asked. "I thought you said someone's name," Elena replied softly. He forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You're hearing things." It was a lazy lie, the kind of lie a person tells when they're sure the other will swallow it. Elena didn't argue. She simply nodded and walked away. But inside, something shifted. Questions formed in the quiet space between her heartbeat and his lies. Her mind pulled forward an old memory she hadn't thought about in years. 3 years earlier, at a dinner with friends, Victor had spoken with pride about loyalty. He declared dishonesty was the one thing he despised. He said cheating was pathetic. He bragged that he would never betray someone who gave him their all. Back then, Elena believed him entirely. She admired his certainty. Now, remembering that night, the words tasted like smoke in her throat. Later, Victor claimed he needed fresh air and stepped outside with his phone. Another new habit. Minutes after he left, Elena's phone buzzed. A message from her cousin, Marcus Hale, 34, her father's nephew, and someone who had known Victor even before she did. Marcus rarely texted her directly. He usually kept a safe, neutral distance. The message was short. "Elena, if Victor starts coming home late, please call me. I need to tell you something." Her breath caught. Marcus was many things, but dramatic was not one of them. If he said he needed to talk, it meant something was deeply wrong. Elena stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then typed back, "He's already coming home late." The 3 typing dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply arrived. A chill slid down her spine. When Victor came back in, the night air and the same perfume followed him. He didn't look at her. He didn't say goodnight. He walked upstairs, leaving her alone with a quiet house and louder thoughts. She sat there long after he disappeared, staring at her reflection in the dark window, wondering when the man she married became someone who whispered another woman's name. In the days that followed, those hairline cracks in her trust would widen into something she could no longer ignore. The moment that shatters what remains of her trust is coming, and this time, it leaves a mark she can't hide. If someone had pressed pause on her life and replayed the worst moment frame by frame, it would start here. The sound exploded first, sharp, sudden, violent in its intention. Elena didn't process what happened until her vision blurred for half a second. Her cheek burned, heat spreading across her skin. Victor Reed, her husband, the man she once believed would protect her, stood in front of her, chest heaving, eyes wide with a mixture of anger and something uglier, control. Elena, 32, gentle but steady, was not used to violence. She was used to listening, compromising, hoping that honest conversations could fix problems. Victor, 35, had been changing for weeks. Late nights, secretive calls. The name Sabrina spoken in tones Elena was never given. Messages from Marcus that hinted at things she didn't see. And now, this. "What was that?" Elena whispered, voice shaking more from disbelief than from the impact. Victor didn't apologize. He didn't rush to check if she was hurt. He looked at his own hand instead, flexing his fingers like he'd brushed against something unpleasant. "It's your fault," he muttered. "You keep pushing. You keep asking questions. You're making things harder than they need to be." All she had asked was why he smelled like another woman's perfume again, why Marcus seemed worried, why Victor had started hiding his phone. For him, that was enough to consider her the problem. A painful silence filled the room. Then a soft gasp sounded from the hallway outside their front door. Olivia Hart, their neighbor, stood there frozen. She was 42, lived alone, and often left small potted plants near their shared corridor. That evening, she had come to return a misdelivered package that had been dropped at her door by mistake. The door had been slightly ajar. She had heard the argument. She had heard the words. And now she had seen the slap. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes wide with shock and concern. Victor didn't notice her. He was too busy reclaiming the moment with words. "Elena, don't act dramatic," he said, tone sharp. "People argue. Couples argue. Don't make a scene out of nothing." His words hurt less than the realization behind them. He didn't see this as something. He saw it as normal, maybe even justified. Elena raised a shaking hand and touched her cheek. Her fingers met hot skin. Her mind pulled her backward into a memory. Her father, Elias Ward, sitting in the old family library when she was 16. Shelves full of books. Dust floating in the light. "If someone uses their strength to hurt you," he said, his hand steady on her shoulder, "don't fight them with fists. Fight them with your mind. Protect your dignity, not their pride." At the time, she didn't understand why he looked so serious when he said it. She never imagined she would need that advice in her own living room. The flashback faded. Victor grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. "I'm going out," he said sharply. "Don't wait up." He brushed past Olivia in the hallway without seeing her. She stepped back quickly, heart pounding. Once the door closed behind him, Olivia hurried inside, holding the small package against her chest. "Elena, I heard everything," she whispered. "Are you okay? Do you need help? Should I call someone? Your sister?" Elena lowered her hand from her face. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She looked calmer than she felt. A calm born from something breaking and then going strangely still. "No," Elena said softly. "I'm all right." She wasn't, but she was making a decision in that silence. Olivia squeezed her arm gently. "You don't deserve this. If you ever need a statement or someone to say what they saw, I will." The words landed quietly but firmly. A witness, a line of truth that could not be unsaid. After Olivia left, Elena sat on the sofa, the house feeling like a stranger's home. He slapped her, and he enjoyed the control it gave him. That wasn't an accident. It was a sign that the man she married was gone, and in his place stood someone willing to hurt her to protect his lies. Her phone buzzed on the table. She almost ignored it, until she saw the screen. Unknown number. One message. "I know what Victor has been doing. We need to talk." Her heart hammered. For a second, she thought of Marcus, of his unfinished warning. She stared at the message, the bruise on her cheek throbbing with each beat of her heart. The next discovery would not just hurt her feelings, it would change the entire direction of her life. Pressure, demands, and a forced decision are coming, and they won't be as simple as a signature on paper. Morning didn't arrive with sunlight. It arrived with a loud slam, a thick folder hitting the dining table so hard the sound echoed through the quiet apartment. Elena flinched. Victor Reed stood over her, jaw tight, suit already on, as if this were just another efficient appointment in his schedule. "Sign here," he said. "Now." No apology for the slap, no mention of last night, no question about how she slept or if her cheek still hurt. Just orders and divorce papers. The impact of the moment hits hard, then thins into a cold, steady calm. Elena stared at the folder, the bold black letters on the top page blurred before her eyes. Petition for dissolution of marriage. It felt unreal and at the same time, strangely expected. She could still feel the echo of his hand, still see Olivia's shocked face, still hear the way he had dismissed everything as nothing. And now suddenly he wanted her gone, but in a way that made everything easy for him. Victor crossed his arms. "I don't want to drag this out," he said. "I want freedom, and you just need to cooperate." Behind him stood Evan Dre, his business partner. Evan looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. He wasn't there for Elena. He was there as a witness, someone who could later say, "Yes, she signed. Yes, she seemed calm." Elena swallowed. "Victor, Why are you doing this like it's a business deal? After last night, he cut her off. Last night was you pushing me. This is me fixing my life. His phone buzzed on the table. The name lit up the screen clearly this time. Sabrina, he answered without shame. Yeah, I'm here, he said, turning his back a little. I told you, I'm handling it. She'll sign. A pause, a short laugh. No, she's not fighting me. She's too soft for that. He ended the call and didn't bother hiding the satisfied look on his face. Evan shifted awkwardly, staring at a spot on the wall. To lock everything in, Victor pulled up another contact and pressed call, putting it on speaker. Reddick, it's Victor Reed, a calm male voice answered. This is Malcolm Reddick. Officer Malcolm Reddick worked as building security and also part-time with local law enforcement. Elena had seen him around the property, always neutral, always polite. There's a domestic situation, Victor said, carefully choosing his words. My wife and I are signing divorce papers. I want a neutral witness so there's no claim of pressure later. Can you come up? Elena's head snapped up. He was setting the scene, not just for her, for whoever might one day ask what happened. There was a brief pause. I'll come by, Officer Reddick replied, but I'm only there to observe, Mr. Reed. I can't force anything. That's fine, Victor said smoothly. Just be present. Within minutes, a knock sounded at the door. Officer Reddick walked in, scanning the room with a practiced eye. He took in Elena's pale face, Victor's rigid stance, Evan's uneasy posture. What exactly am I walking into? He asked evenly. Victor pointed at the papers. We're signing a divorce agreement, and I want it on record that she wasn't threatened or forced. Elena heard the quiet twist in those words. He wanted proof things looked fair, even if they didn't feel that way. Reddick turned to Elena. His voice softened. Ma'am, do you understand what you're signing? She nodded slowly. Yes. Do you want a lawyer present? He asked. The question hung in the air. Victor tensed, just enough for someone paying attention to notice. Elena's chest tightened. A part of her wanted to say yes. Another part remembered her father's conditions. The trust that would only fully awaken if she walked away from this marriage without trying to cling to Victor's wealth. Her voice came out steady. No, I'll sign. Victor's shoulders relaxed, relief flickering across his face. Reddick didn't move closer. He stayed by the door, watching calmly. He wasn't there to intimidate her. He was there to make sure no one crossed a line. Evan stepped back, giving her space. Elena picked up the pen. Her hands trembled once, then grew still. The agreement in front of her was simple and cruel. No request for spousal support, no claim to his business assets, no fight for anything that had his name on it. She read each page, slowly, carefully. Every clause she accepted without arguing didn't just free him. It activated the silent promise her father had built for her years ago. With each signature, she released any legal claim to Victor's money, and with each signature, she stepped closer to the trust he didn't know existed. When she signed the final page, Victor exhaled like he'd just closed a deal. This is good, he said. This is the right step. He gathered the papers quickly, already talking about filing them today so everything could move fast. As he walked Officer Reddick and Evan to the door, Reddick paused and turned back to her. If you need anything, he said quietly, including a statement about how this happened, you can contact me. For a second, Elena saw it. He had noticed her cheek, the faint discoloration, the way she held herself. Then he left. The apartment fell silent. Elena stood alone by the table. No papers left in front of her, only a faint imprint where the folder had been. Her phone buzzed. A new message from the same unknown number as the night of the slap. Meet me. I can show you what Victor has been hiding. Her heartbeat steadied. The coldness in her eyes wasn't emptiness anymore. It was focus. The truth was no longer just threatening her marriage. It was about to redirect her entire future. A night of quiet collapse will awaken a strength she didn't know she still had. The night did not explode with anger. It simply went quiet. Elena sat alone in the dark living room, the shape of the dining table a shadow in front of her. The spot where the divorce papers once lay was empty now. Her cheeks still remembered the slap. Her heart still remembered the man she thought Victor was. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even move for a long time. She felt nothing. It was the kind of numbness that doesn't comfort. It just covers everything like a heavy blanket. Slowly, the story sinks into reflection. Eleanor Reed, soft-spoken and loyal, had always believed love was something you worked on, not walked away from. She was the kind of person who tried to fix what was broken, even when she wasn't the one who broke it. Her father, Elias Ward, had been the opposite of Victor in all the ways that mattered. He built wealth quietly. Old investments, private companies, land that had been in the family long before Elena was born. But he never raised his voice to prove he was powerful. He never raised his hand to prove he was in control. Flashback unfolds. Warm light, familiar furniture, the steady scratch of a pen on paper. A younger Elena, around 18, sat in her father's study. The tall windows looked out on green fields. The shelves were full of law books and ledgers. Elias held a folder with her name on it. "This," he said gently, "is the Ward Trust." He opened it, showing her a stack of documents she didn't fully understand at the time. "It will protect you," he explained, "but it is not a prize for greed, Elena. It's a safety net for your heart." He told her the conditions clearly. The trust would remain dormant while her life was stable. It would fully activate only if she married for love, and later walked away from a marriage without trying to profit from its end. "If someone loves you, they won't try to control you with money," he said. "And if you ever have to leave, I never want you to stay out of fear of not having enough." She remembered smiling, a little embarrassed. "Dad, I don't think I'll ever be in that kind of marriage." Elias smiled back, sadness in his eyes she didn't understand then. "I hope you're right." The flashback fades. Back in the present, the house felt smaller than before. The furniture felt mismatched to her life. Victor had taken the papers to file them. The marriage was ending on his timeline, but the conditions he thought were giving him freedom were quietly unlocking hers. Her phone lay beside her. She picked it up, not to call Victor, not to beg, but because she needed someone who still saw her clearly. She called Clara. Clara answered on the first ring. "Elena, you never call this late. What happened?" Elena opened her mouth. For a moment, nothing came out. Then her throat loosened. "He gave me divorce papers," she whispered. "I signed them." Clara didn't shout. Didn't say, "I told you so." She exhaled slowly, choosing her words like stepping stones. "Then he doesn't deserve another minute of your life. Come stay with me tonight. Please." Elena looked around the apartment that had been called their home. It no longer felt like hers. "I'm okay," she said softly. It was a lie Clara could hear. "Elena," Clara said, voice gentle but firm. "You're not alone. Dad didn't leave you alone either. Call me if you change your mind." They hung up. The numbness shifted, just a little. A crack in the silence where something else could enter. Her phone rang again. A different name appeared this time. Aunt Miriam. Elena straightened instinctively. "Aunt Miriam?" Miriam's voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. "Elena, I received notice today from the trust lawyers." "Notice?" Elena asked. "The divorce petition was filed," Miriam said. "Our legal team has triggers on your name for this exact reason. Your father planned for this." Elena's heart stumbled. "What does that mean?" "It means," Miriam said slowly, "the contract is activating. The Ward Trust is moving from dormant protection to full inheritance." Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty this time. "Elena," Miriam continued, "we need to meet. Tomorrow. The lawyers, the trustee, everyone your father put in place. There are things you need to see." Fear flickered through her. Not of Victor. Not anymore. It was fear of how big her life suddenly was beneath the quiet surface. But beneath the fear, something else rose. Something steady. Something her father had hoped she would one day feel. Purpose. She ended the call and sat in the dim room, staring into the darkness. For the first time that night, she didn't feel empty. She felt ready. Tomorrow she would learn that her silence had not made her weak. It had protected a power Victor never even thought to look for. Evidence, secrets, and a powerful shift are about to begin, and the unknown messages will finally reveal the person behind them. The shock hit first, not from Victor this time, but from the number printed in clear, bold ink on the document in front of her. $400,000. Elena stared at it, breath trapped in her chest. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but from the weight of realizing just how much her father had been protecting all along. Across from her sat Aunt Miriam Ward. Elegant, strict, the quiet guardian of everything Ward. They were in a private meeting room at a downtown law office. Tall windows, a long table, shelves lined with neatly organized binders. "Elena," Miriam said gently, "your trust has officially activated. The divorce filing triggered the clause your father wrote years ago." The intensity of the moment slowly softened into reflection. Elena swallowed. "I never wanted money to be the reason I stayed or left," she said quietly. "I know," Miriam replied. "That's why he trusted you with this. He didn't design this trust to change your heart. He designed it to protect it." Before Elena could answer, the door opened. Attorney Mara Ewan stepped in, a woman in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, calm, and controlled. She set a laptop and a thick folder on the table. "Mrs. Reed," she greeted with a small nod. "I've handled Ward family legal affairs since before your father passed. We've been tracking your marital status in case this day ever came." Right behind her came another presence. Daniel Pierce, 38, walked in with a slim case over his shoulder. Calm eyes, observant posture, movements that said he saw more than he said. "Elena," he said respectfully, "we've met briefly before. Your father hired me years ago to keep an eye on anyone who might try to take advantage of you. I've been in the background ever since." Something clicked in her mind. "The messages," Elena said slowly. "The unknown number that texted me after the slap. The one that said, 'I know what Victor has been doing.' Was that you?" Daniel nodded once. "Yes. I didn't use my name at first. I didn't know how closely Victor was watching your phone. I didn't want to put you in more danger." A quiet logic gap closed. No more mystery stranger. Just a man her father trusted, finally stepping forward. Mara slid the thick folder toward Elena. "This," she said, "is what we've gathered so far." Elena opened it carefully. The first document was a preliminary report from the trust lawyers, confirming that the divorce filing and her choice not to pursue Victor's assets had activated her rights to the full Ward fortune. The next pages held records Daniel had been assembling over the past months. Photos of Victor and Sabrina entering a hotel, sitting close in a restaurant, standing too comfortably in a parking lot. Bank statements showing unauthorized charges from the joint account. Hotels, jewelry, dinners, luxury gifts. Screenshots of messages Daniel had recovered, including one where Victor wrote to Sabrina, "Once she signs, we'll be free. Your dad will finally take me seriously." Elena's chest tightened at that line. It wasn't just an affair, it was strategy. Victor wasn't just leaving her for another woman. He was trading her for access. Mara watched her carefully. "Elena," she said, "you haven't asked Victor for anything. No support, no share of his business. From a legal standpoint, you have been more than fair. That gives you clean footing if this ever becomes public." Elena closed the folder slowly. Her hands were steady now. "What do we do?" she asked. "We don't rush," Mara replied. "We gather everything. We build the strongest possible case. When we walk into court, we don't go in angry. We go in prepared." Daniel added, "I'll keep tracking Victor and Sabrina. Now that he thinks you're broken and out of the way, he's getting careless. That carelessness will give us more proof." For the first time in days, Elena didn't feel like someone things were happening to. She felt like someone making a choice. Miriam reached out and placed her hand over Elena's. "Your father wanted you to know this. You never have to fight like them. You fight with truth, and now you have support to do it." Later that afternoon, as Elena stepped out of the law office, her phone buzzed again. This time, the name on the screen wasn't unknown. It was Daniel. "He just booked dinner with Sabrina tonight. If you're ready to see the truth for yourself, meet me. I'll be outside your building at 7. A chill ran through her. Not of fear, but of final clarity approaching. Tonight, she would no longer imagine what Victor was doing behind her back. She would watch it with her own eyes. The evidence deepens, and the plan for justice begins to take its final shape. The night started with intensity, not from shouting, but from the sharp click of a camera shutter. A flash, a frozen frame. Daniel Pierce stood partially hidden behind a parked car across the street from a downtown restaurant. Camera raised, eyes steady. Through the wide windows, he watched Victor read. Victor sat at a table with Sabrina Cole. Her hand rested on his arm. He leaned in too close. They laughed like nothing in the world existed except their conversation and their reflection in the glass. From the passenger seat of Daniel's car, Elena saw everything. The angle was distant, but not distant enough. Sabrina's perfume, which once arrived in her home only as a lingering scent on Victor's clothes, was now attached to a face, a smile, a person who knowingly sat in her place. Daniel snapped photo after photo. He spoke quietly, not taking his eyes off the lens. "I know this is hard to see," he said, "but this is how we make sure he can't twist the story later." Elena didn't look away. Her fingers curled around the edge of her seat. "It's not just hard," she murmured. "It's honest." Honesty hurt, but it was still better than living in questions. Over the next hour, they watched Victor pay the bill with the joint card that still carried her name. They watched him open the car door for Sabrina. They watched him press his hand against her back in a gesture that used to belong to Elena, and Daniel documented all of it. Later that week, back at Aunt Miriam's private office, the long table was no longer empty. It held stacks of printed photos, financial reports, phone screenshots, and legal drafts. Around it sat the people now woven into Elena's fight. Mara Ewan, the family attorney, sharp, calm, unshaken. Aunt Miriam, dignified and steady. Clara Ward, Elena's younger sister, protective, angry, but controlled. Greg Lorne, 50, a financial auditor known for exposing hidden fraud, hired by Mara to comb through every line of Victor's transactions. Daniel, investigator, quietly confident, the one who turns shadows into evidence. Elena sat at the head of the table, not because she asked to, but because everyone naturally left that chair for her. Mara opened a folder and slid several photos forward. "These are from the restaurant and the hotel," she said. Daniel made sure everything is time-stamped. No gaps, no room for excuses. Greg cleared his throat and opened his laptop, the screen filled with charts and numbers. "Elena," he said gently, "I traced the joint account for the last 6 months. There are repeated charges that don't match your spending at all." He tapped the screen. "Hotel stays, jewelry, dinner reservations, salon visits. Some of them line up with timestamps from Daniel's photos. Others match locations we know Sabrina has posted from online." Clara clenched her jaw. "So he was using her money to impress his mistress?" Greg nodded. "And to pay for meetings connected to Sabrina's father. It appears Victor has been chasing a business deal he couldn't access on his own." Mara turned to Elena. "Your father anticipated this kind of person," she said. "Someone who would see you as a stepping stone, not as a partner." Clara unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. "I got this from a friend who works near Victor's office," she said. On the screen was a forwarded message Victor had sent Sabrina. "Once Elena signs, your dad will finally open those doors. Everything changes then." Elena read it once, then again. He didn't just leave her. He tried to trade her dignity for entrance into someone else's world. Mara reached into her bag and took out a sealed, thick envelope clipped with red. "This," she said quietly, "is the complete package we'll submit to the court when the hearing date comes." Inside it lay Olivia Hart's written statement about the slap. Officer Reddick's incident note, confirming Victor's stage call and the bruise he observed. Daniel's photos of Victor and Sabrina. Greg's financial audit. Copies of the messages tying Sabrina's father to Victor's ambitions. Proof of the Ward Trust activation and Elena's clean decision not to pursue Victor's assets. Elena's counter-petition citing abuse and financial misconduct. "This envelope," Mara said, tapping it once, "goes directly to the judge, not to Victor, not to his lawyer, not for negotiation, for record." A deep, powerful silence filled the room. Elena looked at the envelope, fingers brushing the edge. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like closure, waiting for its moment. "I'm ready," she said quietly. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Elena. "Victor's been asking around," Daniel said. "He's nervous. He told someone you're being too quiet, and he doesn't trust it. He thinks you might try to come after his money. Mara's eyes sharpened. Good, she said. Let him be afraid of the wrong thing. The closer Elena moved to truth, the more dangerous Victor's assumptions became, and the more powerful her silence truly was. The courtroom doors will open, Victor expecting routine, Elena arriving prepared. The tension struck instantly. The moment the heavy courtroom doors opened, and Victor Reed walked in like a man expecting applause. His shoes clicked against the polished floor. His suit was perfect. His hair was neat. His smile was smug. To him, today was supposed to be simple. A quick divorce confirmation, a formal stamp, a clean new life with Sabrina and her father's connections. He believed Elena would stand there quiet and defeated. He believed she would sign whatever was handed to her. He had no idea what waited for him. Elena stood at the respondent's table, calm and composed. She wore a simple outfit, no flashy jewelry, no dramatic expression, but there was a steadiness in her posture that hadn't been there weeks before. Behind her sat Olivia Hart, the neighbor, hands clasped together, nervous but determined. Officer Malcolm Reddick, uniform neat, expression steady. Clara Ward, protective, eyes sharp. Aunt Miriam, quiet but solid as stone. Daniel Pierce and Greg Lorne, ready with evidence if needed. Near the back of the room, Evan Dre, Victor's business partner, uncertain why the hearing suddenly seemed more serious than he'd expected. Sabrina Cole in a fitted dress, sitting with crossed legs and an expression that tried very hard to look unconcerned. At the front of the room sat Judge Rosalind Hale, a firm, intelligent woman in her 50s, with a reputation for disliking drama and loving facts. Court Clerk Donovan organized files beside her with calm efficiency. Court is now in session, Clerk Donovan announced. Case of Victor Reed versus Elena Reed. Victor stood quickly, ready to direct the story. Your Honor, he began, this is a straightforward dissolution. My wife and I, Judge Hale raised a hand. Mr. Reed, I've read your petition. Sit down for now. Victor's mouth opened in surprise, but he obeyed. Then the judge turned to Elena. Mrs. Reed, she said, your counsel submitted a supplemental envelope to be added to the record, along with a counter petition. Do you wish to proceed with that? Elena inhaled softly. Yes, Your Honor. Mara Ewan, seated beside her, slid the sealed envelope, that envelope, toward the court clerk. Donovan took it to the judge. Victor's smirk faded a little. What is that? He demanded. We didn't talk about any extra paperwork. Judge Hale opened the envelope and began to read. The room went silent, page after page, statement after statement, document after document. Inside she found Olivia's written testimony describing the day she witnessed the slap, Officer Reddick's report outlining Victor's staged call and noting the bruise he observed on Elena's face, photographs of Victor and Sabrina together at multiple locations, clearly time-stamped, Greg's financial audit of the joint account showing hotel payments, expensive dinners, and gifts not connected to Elena, screenshots of Victor's messages to Sabrina about being free once Elena signed, and about her father finally taking him seriously, official confirmation of the Ward Trust, showing Elena as beneficiary of a vast inheritance that she had not used to threaten or control the marriage. Elena's counter-petition, citing marital misconduct, emotional abuse, and financial misuse. When Judge Hale finally looked up, her eyes were cool and sharp. Mr. Reed, she said, do you have an explanation for these materials? Victor stood, color draining from his face. That's exaggerated. Photos can be misleading. She's trying to make me look like a monster because she's rich and... So? Judge Hale cut in. You are not denying that the woman in these photos is Sabrina Cole? And that the funds in question came from a joint account you shared with your wife? Victor's jaw worked. He glanced toward Sabrina. She shifted in her seat, suddenly less comfortable. I don't see how that's relevant to a simple divorce, Victor stammered. It becomes relevant, Judge Hale replied, voice firm, when one party tries to present themselves as the aggrieved side while concealing an affair, misusing joint funds, and possibly staging events to make the other party appear uncooperative. She turned to Officer Reddick. Officer, please stand. Reddick rose. In your report, Judge Hale said, You state that Mr. Reed called you to witness his wife signing divorce papers, and that upon arrival, you observed physical bruising on Mrs. Reed's face. You also noted she agreed to sign without requesting any share of his business or personal property. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Reddick replied. She was calm and cooperative. If anything, I was more concerned about her safety than Mr. Reed's. Next, Judge Hale addressed Olivia. Ms. Hart, you stated that you witnessed Mr. Reed strike his wife. Is that still your statement today? Olivia's voice shook, but her words did not. Yes, Your Honor, I saw it. Victor's facade cracked. Sweat gathered at his temples. This is a setup, he snapped. She's using her money and her family too. Judge Hale brought her gavel down once, sharply. Enough! The sound cut through the room. This is not about who has more money, Mr. Reed. This is about conduct, your conduct. She shuffled the files, her expression unchanged. Given the evidence presented, she announced, this court finds that Mr. Reed engaged in marital misconduct, committed financial misuse of joint funds, and attempted to mislead this court by omission. Victor staggered slightly. Sabrina stared straight ahead, face pale. As such, Judge Hale continued, any financial claims you have made against Mrs. Reed are denied. Penalty fees for misuse of funds may apply, and relevant sections of this file will be forwarded for possible further investigation. A restraining order is granted in Mrs. Reed's favor until this matter is fully resolved. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sabrina stood abruptly, heels scraping the floor, and hurried out without a single glance back at Victor. Evan Dre shifted away from Victor's side on the bench, as though distance might save what remained of his reputation. Victor looked around wildly. At the judge, at Elena, at the empty doorway where Sabrina had vanished. He had walked in expecting control. He was leaving stripped of it. Judge Hale struck her gavel once more. This hearing is adjourned. People moved, whispering, gathering their things. Elena stayed still a moment longer, not gloating, not celebrating, just breathing finally without fear. As Victor stumbled toward the exit, two officials stepped forward near the doorway. Mr. Reed, one said, voice low but firm, we need to speak with you about the financial irregularities flagged in today's evidence. Please come with us. The consequences he thought he'd outrun were no longer in his control, and this time, there was no one left to blame but himself. Victor's public collapse begins just outside those courthouse doors. Chaos hit the moment the courthouse doors swung open. Victor Reed burst outside as if he could escape the judgment that still clung to his name. Elena, he shouted, voice cracking through the open air. Elena, wait! People on the wide stone steps turned to look. Lawyers, clerks, strangers. Everyone paused to watch the man who once walked like he owned every room, now stumble like the ground might drop beneath him. He rushed down a few steps and nearly lost his balance. His tie was crooked. His face was flushed. His eyes were wild. This intense chase slows, pulling deeper into the emotional center. Elena stood near the railing to the side of the stairs, back turned slightly. She hadn't hurried away. She hadn't tried to hide. She simply stood there, the sunlight touching her hair, her posture calm. She heard him before she saw him. She recognized the frantic sound of his shoes scraping against stone. Victor came to an unsteady stop behind her. Then, he dropped. Right there in front of the courthouse, in front of everyone, Victor fell to his knees. Elena, please, he choked out. We can fix this. I'll change. I swear. I made mistakes, but you know me. You know me, people whispered. Some stared openly. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Officer Malcolm Reddick stepped out of the building a moment later, having given his testimony earlier. He stopped at the top of the steps, watching carefully. Beside him, Daniel Pierce adjusted his position, staying close enough to reach Elena if Victor lost control. Elena, please look at me, Victor begged. His hands shook as he reached toward her. Tell them to stop. Tell them to back off. You don't need all of this. I need you. You can't leave me like this. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were calm, not cruel, not vengeful, just finished. Victor, she said softly, for years I thought if I loved you enough, you would choose to be better. But this is what you chose instead. He shook his head quickly, tears forming. It was just, It was just a mistake. Sabrina doesn't matter. None of that matters. I'll break it off. I'll do anything. We can start over. Just don't let them ruin me. There it was. Not don't leave me because I love you, but don't let them ruin me. Officer Reddick moved down the steps, his posture firm but controlled. Mr. Reed, he said, you need to stand up. You're causing a scene. Victor jerked away from his hand. She's my wife, he shouted, voice breaking. Elena, tell him, say something. Daniel stepped closer, placing himself slightly between them. She was your wife, Daniel said evenly, and you treated her like she didn't matter. She doesn't owe you a performance out here? Victor glared at Daniel, but the anger quickly dissolved into panic. He turned his head, searching. Sabrina, he called out suddenly. Sabrina, wait, don't leave. You said we'd do this together. All heads turned. Farther down the courtyard, Sabrina Cole stood near the curb, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller without Victorian arrogance propping her up. When Victor shouted her name, she hesitated, then turned away and moved toward a waiting car. She opened the door, slid inside, and shut it without a backward glance. The car pulled away. Victor's voice broke. Sabrina! Sabrina! But she was gone. Evan Dre appeared a moment later, exiting the courthouse with slow steps. Victor reached toward him with desperate eyes. Evan, you're my friend. Tell them I'm not a bad guy. Help me fix this. Please. Evan looked at him, at the man on his knees, at the gathering eyes, at the weight of the evidence he had just heard in court. I didn't know it was like this, Evan said quietly. You lied to me too, Victor. I can't stand next to this and pretend I didn't hear what I heard. He stepped away, leaving Victor alone on the steps. Reflection deepens. In a matter of hours, Victor had lost his public reputation, his business connections, his access to Sabrina and her father's influence, his claim to Elena's money, his illusion of control. Karma didn't whisper, it spoke loudly, in front of everyone. Officer Reddick finally placed a hand firmly, but not roughly, on Victor's arm. Mr. Reed, that's enough, he said. You need to stand. Go with the officials who asked to speak with you. This isn't the place to argue anymore. Victor's body shook. His eyes were red. His voice had burned out. Elena watched him a moment longer, not to enjoy his pain, but to witness the ending of a story she once believed would last forever. Then she turned to Daniel. Let's go, she said softly. As they walked toward the parking lot, Reddick called out to her quietly. Elena, he said, people who feel like they've lost everything sometimes react badly. Make sure you're never alone at home for a while, all right? Keep your family close. She nodded. I will. When she reached her car, her phone buzzed with a new message from Mara Ewan. Elena, your father left something else for you. Not money, something you need to read. Come by the office when you can. Her freedom from Victor was not the end of her story. It was only clearing space for the final truth her father had kept waiting. Elena steps into a new life, with one last message from her father guiding the way. The moment hit with intensity, a door closing behind Elena as she stepped into her new home for the first time. Not Victor's apartment, not a place filled with fear, waiting, or pretending. Her home, her space, her beginning. Sunlight poured through wide windows, washing the empty living room in soft warmth. The air felt different, open, breathable, almost like the room itself was exhaling with her. Clara Ward walked in behind her, carrying a box labeled Kitchen. She set it down and smiled, eyes shiny with held-back tears. You're home now, Clara said quietly. Elena nodded. The smile that touched her lips was small, but real. Earlier that day, before picking up the keys, she had gone back to Mara Ewan's office, just as the message requested. In a quiet conference room, Mara and Aunt Miriam had been waiting, with one last sealed envelope. Not for the court, not for any judge, for Elena alone. This was written by your father, Miriam explained. He left it with the trust documents to be given to you only if the divorce triggers activated your inheritance. Her hands had trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. No legal language, no numbers. Just Elias Ward's voice on paper. He wrote about the day she was born, the first time she held his finger as a baby. The way she always tried to fix broken toys instead of throwing them away. And then, the heart of it, If you are reading this, it means you chose dignity over revenge. It means someone failed to love you as you deserved, but you refused to become like them. My wealth was never meant to trap you in a marriage. It was meant to make sure you could walk away from one. He ended with a quiet instruction. Use what I left you to rebuild, yes, but also to lift others who were hurt the way you were. That will be our real legacy. The memory of that letter now sat with her in the new home like a gentle presence. In the living room, Aunt Miriam and Mara joined her, stepping over unopened boxes. You handled everything with dignity, Miriam said. Your father would be proud, not because you won, but because you stayed true to who you are. Mara added, you didn't weaponize your wealth. You let the truth speak. That's rare. Eleanor walked to a small wooden drawer built into a side table near the window. Inside, she placed a copy of the same envelope she had once given the judge, the file that had exposed everything Victor tried to hide. She closed the drawer gently, not out of bitterness, but as a symbol, a chapter finished, documented, and put away. He broke the woman he thought was powerless, but she rebuilt a life he never deserved to be part of. The camera of the story pulls back. Sunlight deepens. Her silhouette stands steady in the center of her own space. Some stories end in silence. Others end with a woman quietly choosing herself and finding that her true beginning starts right there. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Elena's journey touched you, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs strength today, and tell me in the comments what lesson you're taking from her story and where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you in my next video.